Welcome to Attending the Days Essays from Lifelook. Today we will read essay number 7, Drinking from the Fire Nose. What a campfire, a blown transmission, and a century of forest policy reveal about where meaning comes from and how we stop fighting what's already there. Heaven and earth are impartial and regard myriad things as straw dogs. Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching. Campfires don't care what we call them. We learn this young if we're lucky. My family learned it across Wisconsin summers throughout the 1990s, hauling a canvas tent that grew mold if we rolled it too soon. Green stains bloomed along the seams. The canvas apparently harbored its own opinions about timing. Once the mold had its way, our family graduated to a Palomino pop-up camper. The camper carried a horse's name, but dragged at the speed of a packed cinder block, equipped with rusty rollers. Our dad hitched it to the red Ford Aerostar as we hauled it across the country, the trailers gently swaying along the curves. The back seat smelled fiercely of bug spray and sunscreen, curiously blended with the wafting ghosts of loaded diapers. A biological mystery, considering the youngest of us had been potty trained for a few years. That Aerostar and Palomino duo saw a lot. Lake Michigan sandy dune shoreline one summer, the Gulf of Mexico the next. Lake Superior buttressing Michigan's Upper Peninsula on another. We just call it the UP, or, if you're localish, the UP. That lake doesn't care about your vacation. It holds the temperature of a wronged ghost trapped by sheets of melting glacier. You don't swim in it as much as survive it, emerging blue-lipped, entirely awake, and stripped of whatever petty grievances you carried into the surf. Then the big family trip to the rim of the Grand Canyon, where we stood at the edge as silence held us, until the grind of someone's Kodak disposable broke the spell. We endured that mechanical of the film advance because even awe had to wait for the winding. The winding ground to a halt as we descended into the canyon, trading the mechanical obligation of capturing the moment for the staggering, silent weight of actually walking inside it. The hills of Kentucky, where our Aerostar's transmission finally surrendered to the Palomino's weight against the endless rolling grades, stranded us for 2 days in a dry county. Us kids, ecstatic about our surprise hotel cable TV and chlorinated pool. Our parents, quietly calculating the grim math of unplanned automotive repair without the anesthesia of a single beer to wash it down. We recovered, and the next year off we went to the Badlands of South Dakota, where the landscape looks like the earth tried to turn itself inside out and got halfway before losing interest. My brother and I found an arrowhead there, napped by a hand long before our minivan ever rattled past. Lives attended to that ground for ages before our family crossed its path. The Badlands keep the whole record and cling to nothing. We found our way back to northern Wisconsin and the UP. We treated that rugged peninsula as our own. It stands as a wild, pine-choked territory geographically grafted to Wisconsin, but legally kidnapped by Michigan over a forgotten border dispute involving Toledo. We claimed its wilderness anyway. Across the years in state parks, every campsite starts with ritual. Gather kindling, stack the logs, strike the match, then have a pause. The flame catches and the circle of faces leans in because warmth pulls us closer before thought does. Nobody tells us to lean. The fire warms whoever sits close. It burns because fire burns. We happily submit to the ritual. Lao Tzu once compared all creation to straw dogs, small woven figures used in ancient ceremonies and discarded once the ritual ended. We are those straw dogs, fully participating in the ceremony of living. We gather around the heat, entirely present before the moment passes and the earth reclaims us. The fire simply reminds us of our place in the sequence. We lean in because we intuitively understand something fundamental. Existence operates with the blind, generous neutrality according to its own time. Conditions and circumstances constantly change, but the underlying essence of existence remains. Heraclitus saw the cosmos as one ordering, the same for all. Fire ever living, kindled in measures and measures going out. To the universe, he observed, all things are fair and good and just, but humans have taken some things unjust, others as just. The flame holds no malice and plays no favorites. The fire remains entirely indifferent to acting as a savior or a destroyer. We assign the role. That neutrality follows us home. The stovetop flame that cooks breakfast, the candle on the kitchen table during a power outage. We call it cozy around the campsite and dangerous in the headlines. Fire remains the same between those two sentences. Our attending turns the meaning. For over 60 years, the United States built a policy around a single hardening assumption: fire destroys. The Great Fire of 1910 burned 3 million acres across the northern Rockies and killed nearly 80 people. Congress responded with the Weeks Act the following year, establishing a framework for cooperative firefighting and federal purchase of forest lands. By 1935, the Forest Service had codified its 10 a.m. policy. Any wildfire spotted had to be suppressed by 10 the next morning. The label hardened into infrastructure: watchtowers, roads, budgets, Smokey Bear, an entire professional identity organized around a single premise. The system projected coherence from the inside: suppress the flame, protect the timber. For decades, it looked wildly successful. Yet the undergrowth kept building. Dead leaves, fallen branches, and dry brush accumulated on the forest floor, a century of fuel waiting in the wings because the small fires that clear the ground never received permission to burn. The SEAL system, well intentioned but driven entirely by the fear of losing control, manufactured the conditions for heightened catastrophe it claimed to prevent. When the fires finally arrived, as the sky darkening, mega drought fueled infernos we have witnessed over the last decades painfully remind us, they swept through uncontainable. They burned hotter, faster, and more violently than anything the pre-suppression forests encountered. We tried to legislate nature to protect ourselves, and in doing so, we built our own pyre. The suffering tells us what the well-intended policy missed. Fortunately, nature also suggests pathways to repair. Step into the Klamath River Basin, and we see indigenous peoples working with fire for millennia. The Karuk of Northern California practice cultural burning, small, intentional, seasonal. They treat fire as medicine. They read the flame's tempo the way a musician reads a rest between phrases, attending to fire's Eigenzeit, nature's own timing, the pace inherent to a process that resists being hurried beyond its own happening. And fire answers them. Certain pine cones crack open only in extreme heat, spilling seeds that waited years for the burn to free them. The fire that clears the floor is the fire that calls the forest back. Their forests thrive because they move with the grain of what fire already does. Nature tends toward harmony in its own time. Even so, the forest keeps part of itself hidden. How flame and seed and soil answer one another runs deeper than anyone traces, the Karuk included. We move with the pattern without seeing all of it. Heraclitus said the hidden attunement is better than the obvious one. And we can let the unseen part stay unseen. One system sealed itself around a label and stopped listening. It severed its relationship with the natural pattern. The other kept the conversation going. You can read the difference in the smoke. The pattern plays inside our bodies too. Inflammation begins as generosity. A cut on the hand, a twisted ankle, a virus crossing the threshold. The damage calls and the body answers with everything it has: blood, white cells, and heat rush toward the wound. The swelling that aches is the swelling that mends. Our body pours its resources toward repair, performing its deepest biological imperative. It does exactly what it evolved to do. Like fire, inflammation mobilizes, protects, and restores without consulting our moral categories. The response ignores good and bad. The trouble arrives when the inflammatory cascade loses contact with the larger system and turns its generous attention into overabundance, lacking discernment. The restoration efforts lose their harmony. Resonance rings flat. When the immune system floods the body without reading the whole room, it disrupts the very restoration it set out to perform. The body begins attacking its own tissue. Joints swell against cartilage that belongs there. The gut lining erodes under friendly fire. The immune system builds its own closed loop, resonant within its sealed perception, responding to threats that exist only inside the seal. We feel the misalignment before any diagnosis arrives. The fatigue that won't lift, the ache that wanders without locating itself, that low hum of a system running against its own grain. The body knows first. The discord builds on its Eigensite, beneath our awareness, until the signal finally breaks the surface. Two patterns, then. One outside the skin, one inside. Fire and inflammation, both neutral in their original emotion, both generous, both capable of destruction when sealed off from the larger pattern they belong to. In life look, I call the ground beneath these patterns nature's values, three movements that recur like the baseline of existence. Generosity, nature's intrinsic givingness, purpose moving from within, potential offered without demand. The fire warms before we ask, and the body repairs before we decide. Second, resonance, existence vibrating in relationship, where patterns respond to patterns and meaning arises in the space between. The forest and the fire reading each other, the immune cell and the tissue it protects joined in mutual recognition. The third, it's harmony, the confluence of opposites where difference generates unity through motion. Burn and regrow, inflame and heal. Day listening into night, a joining that deepens both. Generosity moves first among the three. The potential it offers, freely and without demand, is what lets patterns find one another and settle, in their own time, into harmony. The gift precedes the accord it makes possible. These three underpin our whole existence, the conditions we inhabit simply by being here. Attune to them, and we feel the alignment. Cut against them, and we feel the cost. We don't manufacture resonance or engineer harmony or produce generosity. We clear enough debris away to find them already humming. This clearing mirrors the Karuk's cultural burn. We intentionally tend the ground, allowing small daily fires of awareness to burn through our accumulated mental dry brush. When we refuse to clear this internal undergrowth, when we legislate our inner state like the Weeks Act, suppressing every uncomfortable spark to protect ourselves from feeling the fuel builds, we manufacture our own emotional inferno. Nature's values carry no inherent moral weight. They hum the way gravity pulls, neutrally. Our attending, our agency, and our choices supply the direction, the coloring, and the weight. Generosity underwrites both the Karuk's cultural burn and the Forest Service century of suppression. The difference lives in ways of attending to the resonance and harmony between them. A fair contradiction surfaces here. If these forces stay neutral, why does nature keep settling toward balance? It does settle. Cut against resonance and harmony, and the strain burns out, and the pattern finds its level again. But a tendency is not a preference, and neutral was never the same as directionless. Gravity prefers nothing, yet it rounds every star, a fierce and reliable pull that favors no one. Its even hand spares none. It breaks the fragile thing as readily as the stone. and impartial and unforgiving turn out to be one property, not two. Nature leans toward coherence with the same fierce reliability, a pull and not a wish. And the coherence it reaches stays neutral. The Forest Service's suppression settled into one kind of order. The Karuk's burning settles into another. Both are balance. Which one, and whether it gives life or takes it, is a part we supply. We don't add our way to the living one. We clear our way there, the way the Karuk clear the forest floor, until what was always humming underneath comes through. Let's pull up a chair at the attending table. The coffee grinder howls, the toaster ejects a slightly charred bagel. The dog stares at the drywall, actively decoding a frequency we cannot hear. We sit down amid this domestic clatter and immediately begin sorting the universe into neat little boxes. The Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Trungpa Trungpa, once observed that wisdom is ultimately a domestic affair. That phrase keeps proving itself right here, over the breakfast crumbs. We label things good and bad 100 times before lunch. The traffic, the text that could mean anything, though we've already decided what it means. The weather, the look on a colleague's face that we've interpreted, filed, and responded to before the elevator reaches our floor. Each label is a small act of attending, and each one seeds the next encounter. Much like those Karuk pine cones requiring the intense heat of the flame to crack open, some of our most abundant encounters require the friction of an uncomfortable moment to release their insight. When we lean into the heat rather than label it a threat, we allow the seeds to spread and do their growing. We co-create the world we inhabit through these micro choices, most of them running under the floorboards of our awareness. Beneath those floorboards, some older, faster part of us scans the world before the conscious mind finishes the updates. The cell biologist Bruce Lipton captures the speed of this shaping. The subconscious mind reads every word on a newspaper page before our conscious mind finishes unfolding it. The neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett finds this in the brain itself, which runs as a continuous prediction engine, drafting the world a half step before it arrives. What the brain flags depends entirely on what we have primed it to find. A person living in love moves toward love wherever it sits on the page. A person living in fear spots threat in every headline. One newspaper, one morning, two entirely different worlds. What we attend to today adds a brushstroke to the painting we wake up inside tomorrow. Much of the painting we inherit, some of it we choose. The question sits with how much of the choosing happens with our eyes open. Our choosing determines whether we fight the breakdown or sit by the pool without a beer. Our family trips graduated from that moldy canvas tent to the Palomino, hauled by a van destined to blow its transmission under the pressure of the Kentucky hills. The breakdown was unplanned, deeply inconvenient, and entirely inevitable. Yet, paying for that unexpected repair mid-trip forced an unplanned pause. It allowed us to tend to those new circumstances with a freshly cleared mind. We pulled up a plastic chair at the chlorinated motel swimming pool. We marveled at the staggering abundance of the basic cable TV, realizing it offered infinitely more than the 5 channels we received at home. This was the mid-1990s, remember. The breakdown arrived uninvited. Our attending shaped the memory of it. Campfires ignore what we call them. They burn because burning is what fire knows. The warmth I felt leaning in on those Wisconsin nights, faces lit and shadows cast long behind me, had already arrived. It offered its heat before I asked, disregarding my gratitude and fear alike. The fire never knew us. What hums beneath it might. What are we primed to find? Does our attending move with the grain of how life already holds together, or against it? The baseline hums either way. It always has. Long live that Palomino. For more on nature's values and the Life Look philosophy, visit lifelooknow.com/thebooks. If you enjoyed this, please share Attending the Day's essays from Life Look. Summary. Reality operates with an open, generous neutrality. It tends toward balance, yet holds no preference as it keeps its own time. Our attending dictates the rest. How we choose to perceive, prime, and respond to the world determines whether we flow with the grain of existence or manufacture our own suffering. To live well is to move as the field of change itself, feeling it, questioning it, and following it with care. When we stop suppressing the small daily fires and begin attuning to their Eigensite, we cease fighting the breakdown. We see nature's inherent generosity and can rest within its movement. And so we attend the days.